Now? Got me? All right, good. I mean, I think it'll be good. We'll find out in a minute. Good morning. So the Oysons are back from Arizona. The Swallows have come back to Capistrano, and the Thurstons are in the house. It must be spring. That's good news for the rest of us who have suffered through winter. We have come to Holy Week. And I had one person disagree with me in the first hour, which is not bad, only one. I can get that at home. But anyway, I said this is the darkest week of the year for the church, in my opinion. You may have yours, but it's called Holy Week because this is the week that we remember and celebrate in preparation of the best day in the Christian year, Easter. It is in this week that we consider all that Jesus went through to get us to that point. He's come to Jerusalem, and you saw the palms and the kids and all that. And his disciples are about to learn that he's going to die. Now, Joe Songer had written out a prayer this morning, which is fine with me. And he said a couple of things in it that really maybe better explain what I'm about to explain than what I'm going to say. But it was a week that began with hope and, I'm trying to remember, joy, and ended in sorrow and pain. It's when they started the week with Hosanna and ended it with crucify him. Now, his stock went up and down like most politicians don't during that week. But it's an ugly, dark week, in my opinion. There are certainly more fun days to preach than today. We got Mother's Day coming up. That's always a fun day to preach because you can talk about moms and how much you loved yours and what she meant and all the mothers you know and how important they are. Then Father's Day is in June, right behind that. We can talk about the need for fathers in the home, and men get with it, and talk about the guys you know in your life that were father figures. Then you roll into the 4th of July, and we wear red, white, and blue and sing patriotic songs and preach about all those nice things. And then you roll into the fall, and you get to Thanksgiving. That's a cool time to preach because we're all thankful. Talk about the Pilgrims, you can talk about the Indians, you can talk all these things, family gatherings. It's just a positive kind of thing. Then you get to Christmas, and who can't preach on Christmas for crying out loud? That's a good day. And then finally, you skip Palm Sunday. You get to Easter. It's a capstone of our calendar. But I got Palm Sunday. I've got Holy Week. What do you do with that? Jesus has come to town to die, which I say is the bad news before the good news. But we can't talk about the good news today because it's Holy Week. What this week is his time with his disciples just before his death. It is him telling them goodbye. It's him trying to explain to them what he's doing for them and us. It's about his passion, his beatings, his ridicule, his suffering, his pain. And it's about his cross, taking on the sins of the world. So we come here to reflect on some pretty tough stuff. As we begin Holy Week, we will walk through the story of Jesus' arrest and crucifixion. His control and determination to fulfill his mission, I believe, are nothing short of stunning. He could have called it off at any point. Some of you, my age and a little older, remember the song, he could have called 10,000 angels to destroy the world and set them free. He could have called 10,000 angels, but instead he died for you and me. At any point in this narrative, he could have stopped, called the angels, and it's over. But yet he willingly steps into the pain, the suffering, and maybe most of all the humiliation in order to rescue us. But we are looking forward to the most important day on our calendar, next Sunday, Easter Sunday. Don't miss that. You suffer through today, you've got to come back for Easter. That's the good news. As we gather today, we want to prepare for this week. We want to consider what it is that Jesus is doing. But most of all, we want to consider how he does it and why he does it. So let's step back for a moment and sort of go through the history that gets us to this point. What's brought us to this place, this darkest of weeks? He came to John in the desert to be baptized to kick his ministry off. We read about this event, and we hear a voice from heaven that says, "This is my Son whom I love. With him I am well pleased." We'll hear that phrase again a couple of times. We watched him as he gathered his disciples to follow him through the countryside for nearly 3 years. He began to talk about this kingdom that he came to establish. We're challenged by his words in Matthew chapter 5. The kingdom is radically different from our cultural values then and especially now. The kingdom is about giving up, releasing our own way, and submitting to God's way. We watch him as he encounters people. He heals them in pretty remarkable ways. He raises from the dead. But his healing is not simply for the sake of healing. It is for the sake of revealing who he is. He's the original Johnny One Note. It's all about him being God. That's the whole deal in a nutshell. Not so he can get the glory and the pomp and the circumstance, but there's only one person that could die and take away the sin of the world, and that's God. You might remember a particular instance where Jesus takes his closest companions, Peter, John, and James, with him to the top of a mountain. There he is transfigured or transformed right before their very eyes. Moses and Elijah appear, and they talk about this mission that he's on, about his departure and what he's going to do. And we hear this voice for a second time. The voice says the same thing that it said at his baptism. A voice from the cloud said, "This is my Son. With him I am well pleased." And then he adds, "Listen to him." Listen to him. It seems that everything Jesus does and says is about the one thing, revealing that he is the Son of God. It's about pointing people to what he has come to do, and it will cost him his very life. When he heals the blind man, when he raises Lazarus from the dead, it is all about revealing that he is God and he's on a mission. Now, the added benefit to the blind man and to Lazarus are obvious. But that's not the point. The point is he's here on a mission and he's God, and he came to forgive the sins of the world. And so this week, we come to the culmination of what he's come to do. He's been walking around for 3 years. He's been pouring it into his disciples, teaching them about his kingdom. And now it comes down to this. So we have about 4 scenes to go through quickly this morning. The first is the Last Supper, a cataclysmic event. It's the first part of the text Jesus describes the last meal he has with his disciples. Well, here are his words. He tells his disciples that one of them will betray him. What do you mean, betray you? They're all asking, is it me or is it I? Then Judas, the one that would betray him, said, "Surely not I, Rabbi." And Jesus answered, "Yes, it is you." The scene quickly changes and we listen to Jesus' words. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat, this is my body." Then he took the cup, gave thanks, and offered it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now until that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom." When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Scene 2. Jesus tells them some even more disturbing news. "This very night you will fall away on account of me. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee." Peter speaks up and says, "No way, Jesus. I'll never leave you." You got to be wrong about that. You got to like Peter's confidence, as misplaced as it is. Jesus assures them that they will. "I tell you the truth, this very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And then Jesus goes with his disciples to a place of prayer. He tells them to stay awake, and they go to sleep, just like me. He tells me to do one thing, and I do another. I identify with these disciples that night. Jesus prays for the Father to take away this cup. He might, just by chance, is there any other way? Do I really have to do it this way? This is where he's fully God and fully man at the same time, I think. The fully man's looking for maybe a way to get out of this. The fully God knows better than that. Listen to his words. My Father, if it is possible, if it is, may this cup be taken from me. And in the very next sentence, yet not as I will, but as you will. He prays it 3 times. He keeps checking on his disciples. They're still snoozing. He's in anguish. The full weight of all he has to do is on his shoulders. The temptation, obviously, is to go another route, to bail. Yet Jesus in the garden cements his will to go to fulfill his mission and to die for the sins of the world. These guys are snoozing, and Jesus wakes them with these words. Look, the hour's come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let's go. Here comes my betrayer. So these guys are stumbling out of a deep sleep. What is this guy talking about? And about that time, here comes Judas and a mob of Roman soldiers. Judas kisses Jesus to identify him as the Messiah. How ironic. Betrayed by a kiss. One of those almost sacred things that we do for each other. You really love somebody, kiss them on the cheek, kiss them on the lips, kiss them. The kiss is something special. It's a positive thing. And he uses it to betray the Messiah. Look at Jesus' words here. Jesus knows that he knows what this is all about. He knows how it's going to end. He's already accepted that. Yet he replies to Judas, friend, comma, not you nasty rat, comma, friend, comma, do what you came to do. Do what you came for. The disciples, the guys who've been snoozing, they don't have a clue what just happened probably, but they decide they're going to fight now all of a sudden. Peter pulls out a sword, goes after one of the guards, and lops off his ear. What does Jesus say? Put your sword back in its place. For all who draw the sword will die by the sword, or who live by the sword will die by the sword. Do you don't think that I can't call on my Father? He'll put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? That's a lot. How then would the Scriptures be fulfilled when they say it must happen the way it's happening? You can't rewrite, even though a lot of us try, you can't rewrite Scripture. Jesus wouldn't allow it, even though it meant you're going to suffer an agonizing, horrible, painful, ridiculously humiliating death. It is what it is, he said, and we're going to stick with the plan. You sense Jesus' posture through this whole ordeal? He is on purpose. He is on purpose. He reminds Peter that Jesus, is in control. He could take these guys out with a snap of a finger. He could call off the whole thing. Let's go back and have another Last Supper. Jesus is not concerned with being rescued. He's concerned with rescuing us. He is stepping into danger in order to rescue us from danger. Jesus tells them they don't need swords. He's not going to put up a fight. He doesn't operate with weapons. But he says, but this has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled. We are not going to rewrite Scripture here today. We're going to follow it. He's laser focused, set like flint. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. They had heard enough of this. They could now start to see what was going to happen, and were afraid they were going to be sucked into this vortex and all die. I do understand that and recognize me in that crowd running away. They did what Jesus said they would do. They freaked and they ran. The scene shifts again now to the trial by the high priest. They take Jesus to Caiaphas, the high priest. They hold a mock trial. They bring in liars. They call them false witnesses because that cleans it up. They were a bunch of big fat liars is what they did. They're looking for a way to get Jesus out of the picture. They bring up all sorts of stuff. What does Jesus do? He just stands there. Finally, the high priest is ticked off. Jesus turning the other cheek is making him very uncomfortable. The prisoner's supposed to be afraid. He's supposed to beg for his life. He's supposed to try and cut a deal. Not this guy. He is silent. Entirely. Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony these men are bringing against you?" He's almost begging him to defend himself. And he stays silent. The high priest now has finally had enough, and he says, "I charge you under oath by the living God, tell us you are the Christ, the Son of God." This is what Jesus has been saying over and over for 3 years. Why does he need to say it again? This is not news. Every time he speaks, every time he heals, every time he raises someone from the dead, he's saying, "I'm the Messiah." He keeps telling people he's God's son. He's come to save. So finally he speaks up. "Yes, it is as you say." I think that's a great line. It's not as I say, it's as you say. You've admitted it, you understand it, you are right, sir. I am the Son of God. You get it. But I say to all of you, in the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on clouds of heaven. Yes, I am God. Yes, you're going to see me one day again. Yes, yes, yes. The high priest does what the high priest does in cases like this. He tears his clothes, he rends his garment, and says, "He has spoken blasphemy." You know, the first thing they teach you in classes where you're debating is when you're losing the argument, what do? Change the argument. All you people that are married know that. Come on, we do it all the time with our spouses. She says something, man, I go, "Well, what about this? I don't want to talk about that anymore." And that's what happened here. He's losing the argument, so he changed the argument. They decide that Jesus must die. They're determined to kill him. They think he has played into their hands. But the reality of the fact is, they have actually played into his. You see Jesus' control here? His precision? He knows just what to say at the right time. He also knows they'll kill him if he says it. But he says it anyway. Why? So that the scriptures can be fulfilled. They abuse him. They spit in his face. They strike him with their fist. Others slap him, and someone says, "Prophesy to us, Christ. Who hit you? Give me their names. If you're the Son of God, you surely know that." Remember, he could call 12 legions of angels like that. Take them out where they stand. One word. He created this mob. He keeps their hearts beating in their chest. But he lets them go on, for the scriptures can be fulfilled. They're slapping, spiting, mocking. By the way, our friend Peter's not far away. Matthew tells us he's close behind. Not next to him, not in front of him, but now he's drifted back behind a little bit. He was sitting by the fire in the courtyard while Jesus was with the chief priests. While Peter is sitting by the fire, a servant girl recognizes him, speaks up, "Hey, hey, you're with that Jesus cat, right?" "Yeah, I know you were. I've seen you with him." He responds out of fear, No, not me. You must have mistaken me for someone else." He goes a bit further, and another girl comes up to him. "This fellow's with Jesus of Nazareth." And again, Peter refutes her. Look how Matthew described it. He denied it again, and with an oath, he says, "I don't know the man. I swear to God I don't know him." Finally, others from the crowd will not let this drop. They say, "Listen to his accent." The language is strong here. But for the third time, Peter says, Not me. Then he began to call down curses on himself, and he swore to them, I don't know the man. The one who said, I'll never deny you, has just denied him 3 times. The one who pulled the sword out to defend Jesus caves like a little child. He's overcome by fear, and I understand that. Then Peter remembered the words Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you'll disown me 3 times. And Peter went outside and wept bitterly. You know, there's a difference between sniveling and crying and weeping. To me, weeping is a much deeper emotional response. He wept. Shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. That's important. And he wept. I don't think it's a coincidence that these 2 words are used like that. Meanwhile, the high priest is more determined than ever now. He decides to hand Jesus over to the Romans. Why? Because the Jews can't kill him, but the Romans can. Judas is evidently still in the room, but he didn't realize it was going to go this far. When he sees they are serious, they're going to kill Jesus? He tries to take it back, give them their money back. Look how Matthew describes Judas. He was seized with remorse. We were watching a show last night, and somebody had a seizure. Those are ugly. Have you ever seen anybody have a seizure? They're ugly. It completely takes over their body. And the remorse that he felt seized him. It took over every ounce of his being. Can you imagine being in his shoes? Can you feel his pain, his sorrow, his remorse? He just can't take it. He wants out. He threw the money back into the temple, stormed off, promptly went out and hanged himself. You see, it is never enough to just be sorry for our sin. He was sorry, but he never repented. He never repented, and he went out and hanged himself. The scene shifts again now to the trial before Pilate. He's transported to Pilate, the Roman governor. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, what do you think he asked him? Are you the king of the Jews? That doesn't seem to have gotten to him yet. Yes, it is as you say. I love that line. Pilate doesn't know what to make of Jesus. He was probably not even expecting this on this Friday afternoon. His week was done. He was coasting into the weekend. He doesn't know why Jesus is silent. Did you not hear what they're saying about you? Don't you understand they want you dead? Matthew describes Jesus, but Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. He doesn't get it. Pilate doesn't get it. You see the sort of control Jesus has here? He's laser focused on his mission. He's not about saving himself. He has come to save us. He's not about protecting his own interests. He has come for the interest of those who are dying in their sin. He knows the will of the Father. He knows how this is about to end. This may have been actually the first real church business meeting. Everyone showed up with their own agenda, but only one agenda counts, and they all missed it. Pilate knows what is going on here. He knows that the religious leaders are jealous of Jesus. He knows that their power is threatened. Matthew tells us, for he knew it was out of envy that they handed Jesus over to him. He got that much. Pilate has an idea. He didn't get to the level in the government he was without being shrewd and quick on his feet. There's a custom that the governor would release a prisoner on this Jewish holiday. Here's what I'll do, he says. I'll find the worst scumbag prisoner I can find. By the way, his name's Barabbas. Who wants this guy free? For us, it'd be like somebody freeing Charles Manson. He's crazy. He could manipulate into people who murdered people for him. You want this guy on the streets? You want him in your neighborhood? Do you want him living next door? So Pilate, he decides he'll bring Jesus and Barabbas out. a clear choice between good and evil. No brainer, right? The peace guy or the maniacal criminal. Pilate is on the judge's seat. He's offering the option to the crowd, and he feels good about it. And he feels good about himself. Then what happens? His wife comes in at just the wrong moment for him. She's been dreaming. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him a message. Don't have anything to do with this innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him. What's she talking about? Who knows what might have happened had he listened to his wife? But you and I both know the scriptures needed to be fulfilled. No problem, honey, he says. They have to let Barabbas go. You just don't understand. You're cute, but you're not very smart. They'll let this guy go, trust me. He offers the crowd the option. Matthew tells us that the religious leaders somehow managed to convince the crowd to choose Barabbas. And those three famous words the crowd shouts, "Give us Barabbas! Give us Barabbas! Give us Barabbas!" Pilate is floored. Are you kidding me? Well, then what do I do with Jesus? Two famous words. Crucify him! Now what does he do? Give us Barabbas and crucify him? That's not where he expected this to end up. He can't fathom what's happening. At the same time, he's smart enough to know that if he goes against the crowd, his job will be on the line. So when he sees he's getting nowhere, but instead the uproar is getting louder, he took water, a bowl of water, washed his hands, and said in front of the crowd, "I am innocent of this man's blood. It is your responsibility." All the people answered, "Let his blood be on us and our children." How prophetic was that? They're talking about blame. What they did not realize is that Jesus' blood was not about blame. It's about forgiveness. And they didn't get it. So Pilate does what deep inside him he knew he shouldn't do. He releases Barabbas to them. But he has Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. The ball is rolling. The horse has left the barn. The genie's out of the bottle. It will not be stopped. The sentence is final. Death is inevitable. And now we move to the crucifixion, the final scene. What unfolds next is just, to me, unbelievable. I'll be 62 years old in July, and I've heard this thing preached on at least 55 times that I can remember. You'd think I'd get it by now. It still shocks me. After all this, that he went through it. It's been the subject of books, of movies, volumes of theological treatises. I want to draw your attention to one more verse this morning as all of this unfolds. Jesus is beaten, mocked, and nailed to a cross. He suffers the wrath of God for the sins of the world. He fulfills his mission of rescue. He does not falter. He does not veer off course. He does what he was sent to do. But in total control and at the same time, total submission. Now that makes no sense to any of us. Control is an antithesis of submission. That's not true. That's a lie of Satan. The only way we can submit is to totally be in control and submit our lives to someone else. They do go hand in hand. And look at what Matthew tells us. And this is very rich here, I think. Look at what the pagan onlookers said in response to what they experienced. When the centurion and those with him, the other guards who were guarding Jesus, he's hanging on the cross, they experienced the earthquake. They saw what was going on. They were terrified, and they exclaimed, "Surely he was the Son of God." It took a Roman soldier to echo the words for the first time, maybe as a human being. Surely. No, all this doesn't happen like this. This must be true. Just like the voice proclaimed at his baptism and at the transfiguration. He is, and still is, the Son of God. Now even the Roman soldiers get it. May this week, this Holy Week, by my interpretation, the darkest week of the church's year, not just be another week for you. May we find time this week to reflect on the power of this story. May we consider how Jesus' passion changes our world, our life, and our day-to-day business. As we begin Holy Week, we'll walk through the story of Jesus' arrest and crucifixion. Jesus' control and determination to fulfill his mission are nothing short of stunning. He could have called it off at any point, yet he willingly steps into the pain, the suffering, and the humiliation in order to rescue us. Yes, this week is dark. It is ugly, and it is gruesome. But I leave you this morning with the words of the great Baptist preacher Tony Campolo. It may be Friday, but Sunday's coming. I had the occasion about a month ago in my work to introduce a speaker at a prayer breakfast down in Charleston, South Carolina. You've heard of the New York Yankees, right? You may have heard of Mickey Mantle. Have you heard of Bobby Richardson? Some of you have, okay. He's called the littlest Yankee, 5'5". He's now 80 years old. My company sponsored the meeting, and I got to introduce him, which means I got to have breakfast with him. And if you know anything about me, I love baseball. And I get starstruck around baseball players. But this gentle man spent time with me. We talked about, he crushed my 1961 Reds when he was with the Yankees. We talked about that. I finally forgave him for that. Signed a couple of baseballs for me. Just a great guy. But the thing I want to tell you about Bobby Richardson is, he's the only baseball player ever to win the World Series MVP from the losing team. That's how special this guy was. He's also the guy that led Mickey Mantle to Christ. Now, if you know anything about Mickey Mantle, he was a hard-living dude. Nice guy, but hard drinking, hard living, just put the list down in front of you, it was him. Bobby Richardson led him to the Lord. Which brings me to my closing story this morning. Most of us that are my age and over 40 know who Mickey Mantle was, really. I grew up with him he was just one of the best players. He took Joe DiMaggio's place, for crying out loud, with the Yankees. That's how good he was. So there's two kids, maybe late teens, early 20s, living in Detroit. And the Yankees were coming to town. And the one kid, although he loved his Tigers, was a huge Mickey Mantle fan. He had to go try and see the Mick. So he'd always told his friend, he knew the chapter and verse of his statistics and everything he'd done, where he grew up, what his kids, he knew it all. Kind of like you this morning, I'm not sure I told most of you anything new this morning. And I admit that. You've been to church a lot. You've heard the Holy Week story, the story of the first. You've heard it all. I didn't give you anything really new today. Maybe a different twist here and there, but nothing really new. So these two kids are standing outside an elevator at the Yankees team hotel, and the doors open, and guess who's there? Number 7, the Mick. They were both frozen. The kid that knew everything about Mickey Mantle couldn't open his mouth. Mick stepped off the elevator and just slightly glanced that way and walked on, and it was over with. That chance encounter was done for a lifetime. And his friend says, I thought you knew you know, why didn't you say something? Yeah, I said, I know everything about Mickey Mantle, but I don't know him. I just don't know him. I've never met him. That's the first time face to face, and I blew it. So my suggestion for you this morning is, with all the knowledge you have about Jesus, chapter and verse and story after story and flannel boards when you were a kid and all that, my question is, you know a lot about him. But the elevator doors open and he stepped off the elevator. Would you know him? Or just let him slip right on by? Would he stop and know you? That's my challenge to you this morning as you enter into Holy Week. It's that clear. This isn't hard to understand. You either know him or you don't know him. If you don't, I encourage you, it's time to meet him. So as the praise team comes this morning, sing one of my favorite songs, Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone. That's exactly what will happen to you. When you quit knowing all about him and start knowing him, those chains will slip away, your life will be renewed, and you're on your way home. You're on your way home.